All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation, where right and left come to be reasonable. The theme tonight, what we focus on fixates, but what we ignore, we empower. What is that? Like a Hallmark card? No, I'll explain. In California, people are on high alert for a transgender athlete competing in California Interscholastic Federation sports events, despite the president's order prohibiting biological males from competing in girls' and women's sports. Social media is sizzling. People are protesting for attention to this perceived threat, and the president made it a priority today. He threatened to hold back, quote, large-scale federal funding from the entire state of California if his executive order about transgender sports is not adhered to. In another culture war, Trump upped the pressure on Harvard University, asking federal agencies to cancel all contracts with the university worth up to $100 million. Why? Well, primarily, he doesn't like what he sees as a liberal agenda on many campuses. Now, part of the conflict, though, has to do with the protests and the anti-Semitism and extreme Islamist sympathies that were condoned on some campuses. Now, of everything I just mentioned, this last little aspect is really the only thing that matters if you care about safety and security for real, okay? Like real threats. Trans athletes are not a real threat. I get why people have a problem with it, okay? That's not my point. I'm just talking about the priority we're getting it. I understand what it could mean for certain girls and their chances of excelling and getting scholarships. I get it. But to have the president focus on it this way, to have all of us, to have you know so much about this issue, when you know so little about what threatens you and your family most. We never talk about it. It just blipped up and then went away again over the weekend, and now it's gone. You know what the biggest threat is to us here at home? The threat of radical Islamism. It is on the rise in this country and globally, and I've seen this movie before. And the sequel is going to be just as threatening, if not worse. God forbid there's another 9/11. God forbid. Nobody wants that. Hopefully it never happens anything, but we don't need anything like that for the threat to be real. To me, that's the only thing that matters in this Harvard beef with the president. Because I'm telling you, our young people being vulnerable to radicalism is a huge threat, bigger than anything else that we discuss. Israel is just the obvious point of conflict, but Iran and its proxies and the other growing Islamist sects are coming. It is not over. It's not gone just because we left the region. And in fact, it may be more intense because we did. Before the Memorial Day weekend, the State Department issued a travel advisory for Americans traveling to Italy. Italy, of all places, one of the most popular places to go. Nobody thinks Italy and terror. I have family there. But why? A growing risk of terror attacks and violence. This is the new reality. Here at home, many young people, especially young men, are praising the guy who murdered 2 Israeli embassy workers. He wasn't a Muslim. And a lot of these people praising him are not Muslim. But they are susceptible to extreme thinking. You see this influencer, Guy Christensen? Hundreds of thousands of followers? Here's the message from him.
I take it back. I do not condemn the elimination of those 2 Zionist officials who worked at the Israeli embassy last night. I want to urge you first to support Elias's actions. He is not a terrorist. He's a resistance fighter. And the fact is that the fight against Israel's war machine, against their genocide machine, against their criminality includes their foreign diplomats in this country and internationally.
Where'd he come from? Like, how is this his fight? You see what I'm saying? You take people who don't have any sense of purpose and they connect to the suffering, perceived or real, of others, and they make it their own. That is the risk. That's who that guy was who murdered the 2 Israeli embassy workers. He's not a jihadi. This punk's post caused an outpouring of calls for the DOJ to investigate the influencer. Good. And DOJ official Leo Terrell posted, the DOJ is following all leads and investigating his threats. But see, I want to see the same urgency that you have for trans athletes, okay, or for lawfare, or for Hunter Biden's laptop, or, Trump's meme coin, and all this other stuff. Because this goes so much deeper, and we're sleeping on it. We're sleeping on it. Liberal campuses, trans athletes, lawfare. These are all devices of division that work for the two parties to keep us separated from our common concerns that should bring us together. And this is the unifying thread. You want to be scared? You want to be worried about somebody hurting you? About attacking your kids? Ruining your family? Maybe killing you? None of the things that are on our agenda has any chance of doing any of that to you, except radical Islamism. And we speak about it the least. It is not a priority for this administration, nor was it for the last one. And I'm telling you, especially now with these talks with Iran and starting to poke that beehive again, this is where we should be focused. Why? You don't have to be Muslim to be radicalized. Left-wing groups are already making stickers of the killer, applauding the murders of the embassy workers. They're not Islamists. So why would they do that? Because violence as a voice for people who are desperate and stupid is real. Join me in keeping a focus on what really matters. I'm going to keep covering this every time we see another manifestation of it. This is the threat, specifically with what's happening with young men in this country. There is a vulnerability unlike any we've seen in a generation. And if we want to talk about, these things that are becoming, the fight of the moment, there is something about Harvard that I think is actually worth talking about. I don't know that a lot of the actions the president's saying he's going to take will actually happen. I mean, let's be honest. He's big on the talk, not always on the walk when it comes to threats, right? We just lived it with the tariffs. We'll talk about that tonight. Trump is considering taking $3 billion in U.S. grants that are meant for Harvard for scientific and engineering research and giving it instead to trade schools. Now, I don't think this is going to happen. But just like with Trump's initiative of saying, hey, we got to start focusing on the working class, not just the top, that's true. His way of doing it, I think, is killing small businesses and upsetting the economy. But once again, him saying we have to focus on the artisans, that's true. And I want to bring in someone who has been owning this and sees the risks to our young people, especially our young men, and the need for artisans, and there is opportunity here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mike Rowe. Good to see you, brother.
Nice to see you, Chris. How are you?
So I'm doing okay, and I was happy to hear this. Again, not because I know that it's going to happen, but it's nice for this really obvious deficiency to get some attention. And what does it mean to you? Why would it be a good idea for money that's supposed to go to the top echelon university to go to trade schools instead?
Well, look, in a binary world where those are truly the only two things that can be done with $3 billion of taxpayer money, if you ask me door number one or door number two, one being Harvard, two being trade schools, I'd say give it to the trade schools. But if you were to say, if you want to close the skills gap, and if you want to turn the will gap around, what's the best way to do that with $3 billion? I would not say give it to the trade schools any more than I would say give it to any school or any series of schools. Look, the Ivy League, I'm sorry to say, has beclowned themselves in recent months, and Harvard has led the beclowning. Part of what I love about the president's post is the fact that it's going to force conversations like this one. And a lot of taxpayers, Chris, for the first time, are going to realize that the Harvard Corporation is sitting on a $54 billion endowment. their president is currently screaming that this post and the idea that they could lose their tax-exempt status and some of these grants and tax money, the idea that that could happen are, in his words, unconstitutional. Now, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but I think he's mistaken. And I think that the optics here are terrible. And the first shoe to drop is going to be a gobsmacking realization on the part of a lot of regular Americans that this university is already sitting on $54 billion. What the actual hell does that even mean? So get past that and then ask yourself, well, why then would you want to give all that money to another bunch of schools? There's nothing magical about trade schools. I love them, but they're great ones and okay ones and some that fall below, right? So what we need as a people, as taxpayers, is some kind of means testing. You can't just give money to schools any more than you can give it to any random person because they need it or want it or have dreamt of it. So really, if you got $3 billion to close the skills gap, set aside a big chunk for a national scholarship program. Carve away a little bit of that to build an infrastructure that can evaluate the individuals on their merit, right? And then carve away a bigger chunk to start telling the stories and making a more persuasive case for the 7.6 million open jobs that exist right now, most of which don't require a 4-year degree. So
right.
In a binary world, give it to the trade schools. In the real world, the trade schools, that's not going to do it. We've got to get parents and guidance counselors and kids to think differently about the opportunities that are right in front of us.
See, I think that the nexus here is that people have to understand it's not just about alternatives to college. It's about kids, a generation, mostly young men, but not only young men, who really don't have a sense of purpose. You said the will gap. We do not discuss this. You know, I was just at my kid's college graduation, very proud of her. She's a beautiful artist. She's a great kid. I'll send you her music. But you know, there are all these kids out there. We just saw what happened at the Israeli embassy. They're desperate for purpose, and they're vulnerable to extreme ideas, and they're grabbing onto things that give voice to their feeling disaffected and not having anywhere to go. I see a common conversation here about options that we're giving kids, about opportunities to dignity, opportunities to advancement. And if you don't do it, you're going to have a lot of kids who are lost. And when people are lost, Mike, they're vulnerable.
For sure. Couldn't agree with all of that more. But look, I'm not inclined to panic. But if I could reach a panic button, I'd hit it. If I could reach an alarm, I'd ring it. Because as much as I agree with you, it's not just about the disaffected kids, and it's not just about shattered families, and it's not just about a bunch of employers who are struggling to fill the roles. This thing has tipped. Not a week goes by where I don't get a call from somebody like 2 weeks ago, it was Blue Forge Alliance. They represent 15,000 individual companies that build and deliver 3 nuclear-powered subs every year to the U.S. Navy. It's our maritime industrial base. They said, Mike, do you have any idea where the tradespeople are? Can you help us find them? We got to hire. I said, how many? They said 140,000. Okay? 140,000. They said, where are they? Do you know? I said, yeah, man, I know. They're in the 8th grade. Same call from the automotive people. They've got 75,000 open positions for new techs and collision repair. And don't even get me started on energy. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of jobs, welders, steam fitters, pipe fitters. Electricians can write their own ticket today. And that's not even the whole of it. If you think about AI, it's fun to joke about it, but we're in the race of our lives. If we don't win that race, a lot of this is going to become incidental. That means data centers. I've talked to governors. I just talked to Governor Abbott. I just met with the Secretary of Education. I've talked to the governor in South Dakota and down the list, and men and women who run some of our biggest infrastructure companies. Chris, they're worried in an existential way. They're comparing the the labor shortage vis-a-vis their ability to build data centers to the modern day Manhattan Project. It's what you're talking about is spot on, but this thing is like an elephant. And if you hang on to the tusk, right, it's like the blind man. You grab the tusk and you figure you're holding on to an ivory statue, but there's more to it. There's a tail and there's some legs and this is a big hairy monster. And the thing that I think we're missing is the same thing that Barack Obama missed in 2009 when he assumed those 3 million shovel-ready jobs baked into the Highway Infrastructure Act were going to be filled. He forgot that he was talking to a country that wasn't enthused about picking up a shovel. And President Trump could make the same mistake if he succeeds with his tariffs and all of the reshoring. He's talking about creating 1.5, 2 million manufacturing jobs. Well, guess what? In January, we had 482,000 open jobs in manufacturing in this country right now. So we are whistling through the graveyard. It's only a matter of national security.
And that's why it needs more attention. And if nothing else, I hope the Harvard conversation kind of brings up and makes people be like, what? Trade schools? Why? You know, it'd be good just to get people thinking about it. In terms of the palette of different pursuits that Mike Rowe has, people you should know. These were stories you were dying to tell. You finally got your opportunity. Why do you love this, and why will people like it, in addition to everything else you do?
I hope for the same reason they like Dirty Jobs. It's a blisteringly honest look at decency and kindness as it exists in the species today in an aggressively bipartisan way. Jobs was a rumination on work. Somebody's got to do it was a rumination on avocation and play. This is just a love letter to the neighbors you wish you had. These are people who wake up pissed off and anxious because something's wrong in the world and they think they can fix it, and they do. You're going to meet a guy. Oh, my God, next week, Steve Hotz, you're going to love this guy. You're going to want him on your show. He joined the 82nd Airborne. That's him right there. He broke his back jumping out of planes. He lost an eye. He came home. He was about to become a statistic, one of the 17 right now that punched their own ticket. Instead, he started forging knives and found an incredible therapy in it. This guy and the Black Horse Forge, 22,000 vets have come through, all struggling with this or that. 0 suicides. What he's doing down in Fredericksburg is mind-boggling, and nobody knows about it. That guy, Rusty Durham, he repairs bikes and gives them to the homeless people in Orlando. That woman, Judalyn Cassidy, oh my God, she's a female plumber who's training all kinds of young girls in the like 14 and 15 years old to get into the trades. Danny Combs, that kid's working with the autistic community, which has an 83% stick rate once you place them in a trade. We are surrounded, brother. We are surrounded by good news. And I just felt like, you know, what else am I going to do? I'm older than I've ever been. I made my money. I can focus on what I focus on. And these people, they make me feel good to get up every day and get out in the world and push the boulder up the hill. So I just put it on my YouTube channel. I couldn't find a network to take it, so we bootstrapped it ourselves. We got some great partners, and that's how you make TV in 2025.
Yeah, you know, you really are a great example of kind of a one-man band, and you've become your own enterprise of putting stuff out there that you believe matters to people, and you're doing well, and you're doing good. And I'm here to support you, and I'm here for it.
I'm flattered, but no man is an island. And, you know, I've got great help from organizations like Stand Together, the partners who've been supporting me for years. I literally called advertisers I've been working with, and I said, look, I'm going to do this. Are you in? And they didn't hesitate, man. They're like, yeah, let's do it. For God's sakes, let's celebrate the neighbors we wish we had. So we shot 6 of them. We'll see what the country wants. If they want more, I'm around.
Well, I'm here, Sisyphus. Let me know if I can help in any way. Appreciate you.
I prefer to think of you as Quixote, but either way, birds of a feather.
These days, I'm more the windmill. than Quixote, but I'll take it. I'll take it. Be well, my friend. I'll talk to you soon. 4 minutes and 35 seconds. Mike Rowe, ladies and gentlemen. People you should know. Check it out. 6-part series. Last week, I had the president's commerce secretary on, Howard Lutnick, okay? And I gave him a full and fair opportunity to make his points, okay? But not everything he said is true. And that must get a full and fair hearing as well. Americans aren't going to feel pain from the tariffs. How come they're already feeling it? Who? I'll tell you. But the stock market shot up today, right? Everything's good then, right? Wrong. And I'll tell you what we need to focus on if we really want America to be great again. I'm going to turn to my friend, my best buddy, John McNiff, who trades for a living, to call balls and strikes on this economy.
The world has a 10% tariff now. The selling countries overseas, they eat most of it. The currency, as they trade to us, eats the rest of it. But China eats the above numbers, so it's not about China. But the rest of the world at 10%, you're not going to feel anything at all, in my opinion.
Now, that was his opinion. Here's the problem. Guys like him aren't going to feel it, right? But people are feeling it. China does not absorb all the tariffs, okay? They never have, and they're not going to now. So you're going to have a bump in what things cost. And you know who's already feeling it? Small businesses all over the country who can't get what they were getting from China and other places. They can't get them here. They can't get it at the same prices. They don't have the cash reserves that big corporations do. They are suffering, and they are the engine of our economy. New reports say dock workers, truck drivers, mechanics, restaurant employees are all reporting reduced hours and layoffs. Why? Because of the pressure that the tariffs put into play. We're seeing higher mortgage rates, increased borrowing costs, lower tourism, lower consumer spending, and weak corporate confidence because of the uncertainty that is part and parcel of the trade war. I'm not saying that it may not pay off, but that doesn't mean that you ignore what's happening right now. Major companies, Walmart, Adidas, Nike, Mattel, the toy maker, they're all signaling that they're going to raise prices. Why? If China's not the problem, if everything's going to get absorbed. For Lutnick to say, just trust Trump, really? That's the basis? On Sunday, the president announced he was putting a pause on his European tariffs. That's why the stock market surged. It's not because the tariffs worked. It's because he stopped working the markets by threatening them. That's why consumer confidence is up. You don't get to brag about consumer confidence going up when the only reason it's up is because you took your foot off its neck with the tariffs. So let me bring in founder and chief investment officer of Motum Capital, okay? My best friend, John McNiff. He is who I go to. You know, the thought here was, this is who I talk to figure out what to say to you. Why not just have him explain it to you directly? John, thank you for doing it. I know the Knicks are playing, so I know you're going to make it quick. Yeah. But you didn't like hearing what Howard Lutnick said because you felt that he was being very kind of Pollyannish about the realities. How so?
Well, first of all, the effective tariff rate is 18%, 17.8 to be specific. So it's not 10%. And he said that above 15%, he would be concerned. We're already above 15%. So right off the bat, he said something just wasn't factually true. Second of all, the issue that you highlighted with small businesses is a really large one, right? Their ability to absorb these costs is minimal. They're not really big corporations. Small businesses, just to define it, are businesses of less than 500 people. They make up 45% of our GDP, 44% of our employment. And over the past 30 years, 60% of the job growth has come from small businesses. So the effects and knock-on effects these tariffs will have on them is well reported. You're seeing stories about them now, about the effects of the tariffs and how they are on their bottom line, is a big issue for us because they are a huge engine for the economic growth for the U.S.
So this friend of mine runs a business called Gym in a Box. You know, you make fun of me for wearing it, but I'm telling you that electro-stim therapy works. But that's not the point. So she sources a lot of this stuff from Asia, right?
Yeah.
China and other places, and she's now trying to find different suppliers. Overnight, her business all but ended because of this. So how can it be, don't worry about it, when people like Gym in a Box are already having to deal with it?
Right. Well, because the way the tariff works, right? Let's just maybe step back so the audience understands that. There's 368 ports of entry in the U.S. The product comes in to the customs officer, and the importer of record pays the duty on that. So the price that is increased is there. It goes to the U.S. Treasury. Your friend who has to pay that has to pay it right up front if they're the importer of that product. It hits them right away. There could be some reciprocal back where the importing the country of import maybe does a credit or lowers the price, but the price is paid by the U.S. importer, so they absorb it right away, and then most likely pass it on to the consumer. And that's the fear of the imports and kind of the knock-on effect that they will have on consumer spending, on small business spending, on consumption and investment.
Assuming you even have the capital, you know, the cash to get what you need to sell to people in the first place, which is where I think a lot of the small businesses are going to get choked. This is the one other thing I wanted to highlight for people. So the counterfactual is, oh yeah, we already brought in $10 trillion because businesses know they have to do business with Trump. So they're going to invest, they're going to build factories, and it's going to create 5 million more jobs. Forget about the fact that we already have open manufacturing jobs that we can't fill. We're going to have a lot more of them. Here's Lutnick's case to why this is all going to work out.
The president said $10 trillion worth of factories being built in America. You know how many jobs that's going to bring? 5 million. All those people who get those 5 million jobs, they're going to the store, they're going to the deli, they're going to the near hardware store, and that drives our economy, that drives the local economy.
Theoretically, let's leave to the side, I want to see the proof that there's going to be 10 trillion. Trump says doesn't count as proof. But even if it were true, John, why is that not as gratifying as it sounds?
It takes time. Obviously, we know that to make these investments. We already have approximately 7 trillion of capital expenditures each year. So the number is already high. So adding an additional 10 trillion over the course of the next 4 years, yes, is incrementally high, but within context, it is within percentage, whatever, 10% kind of basically a year. Addition to that, 20% addition to that. So those numbers are high, but it takes time for that. They don't keep in mind in the manufacturing sector, like the big issue is that they're going to robotics. So you could make these investments here in the U.S. that will take time and hopefully do create more jobs. However, that industry is going by way of robotics. And you're fighting against a slippery slope with manufacturing jobs decreasing, robotics increasing, and you're going into an industry that definitely has negative headwinds towards it. So to create that would be great. I hope it happens. However, there's a lot of things working against those assumptions, and they are just that, assumptions.
I really think the president gave us a window into his perspective on this when he said, we're going to go back to when we were the strongest during the Gilded Age. It's not when we were the strongest. And there were a lot of problems back then, and there were a lot of conditions that will not be repeated today. It was called gilded for a reason. Gilded means gold-plated, fake. The golden era was the next one, post-World War II. But Johnny, thank you for explaining this, especially on a game night. I appreciate you. John McNiff, Modem Capital. Thank you for setting us straight. Go Knicks. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Up next, go small business. All right, we should be feeding them, not starving them, and that's what's happening right now. Suge Knight, why does he keep coming up in the Sean Diddy Combs trial? Well, let me tell you something. The prosecution's star witness worked for Suge Knight, and he has things to say about them that you need to know if you're watching what's going to happen in this case. The best legal minds in the business. Plus, if he gets through, Suge is going to call in and tell you why the woman on your screen is a little sus. So as we start the third week of the Combs trial, what have we learned? Combs has some fetishes. Combs may well be abusive towards girlfriends, but he's not charged with any of that. He's charged with racketeering, and that has been very thin Is that clear to the jury? Today, the prosecution tried to change that, called Diddy's longtime former assistant, Capricorn Clark, to the stand to make the racketeering case. Guess whose name kept popping up? Diddy's longtime rival, Suge Knight. Let's bring in trial attorney Misty Maris and criminal defense attorney Arthur Idella. It's good to have you both. Misty, thank you very much. I want to start with you, but I got to give a nod to Arthur. You're on a big case for Harvey Weinstein as well, so thank you for being here when you got so much on your plate. We'll be watching that one. Misty, why does Suge keep coming up? I know it's got nothing to do with baby oil, but why?
Yeah, Suge came up right away in 2004, Capricorn Clark's first day on the job. She was threatened by Diddy when he found out that she had a personal connection and also had worked for Suge. She was brought by Diddy and a security guard to Central Park after 9 p.m., where Diddy said, if anything happens because of your connection to Suge, I will have to kill you. So this is one of the threats that came up during her testimony today.
Is that right?
Here's the problem. This is what, even though you're absolutely correct about it being thin regarding the racketeering, the prejudicial value of all of this stuff, it becomes overwhelming. You know, you said, I know if you looked at your words, you said he may be abusive. We know he's abusive. It's on videotape. He's beating the heck out of a woman. Those things that Misty can tell you, like sometimes they're so overwhelming that the evidence goes right out the window. I mean, they locked this woman in a room for 5 days, gave her a lie detector test, and the guy giving the lie detector says, by the way, if you fail, they're going to throw you in the East River.
Yeah, but that's not racketeering. I'm just saying, you're right, Arthur. But Misty, I appreciate you teeing it up. So let's bring in Suge. Suge's calling us from prison to give us some perspective on Capricorn and why he keeps coming up. Suge, can you hear me?
I definitely can hear you. What's good with you, man? Well,
all right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for taking the opportunity, Suge. Co-founder, Death Row Records, for everybody at home. Of course, you know who Suge Knight is. So
well,
you keep coming up.
There's only one founder.
All right, the one and only, the OAO, the OAO, Suge Knight. Yeah. So tell us about Capricorn Clark and whether you believe she is a credible witness for the prosecution to make a racketeering case against Sean Diddy Combs.
Well, look, I say this all the time. Puffy and I are not friends, but Puffy should definitely walk. At the end of the day, how I know Capricorn and when I first heard about Capricorn, it was back when I was doing prison time. When I was doing prison time, it was a guy that didn't work for Death Row, but he was over the security company. This guy, Capricorn, broke his windshield in the back of his truck. He wanted her to pay for it. She couldn't pay for it. A guy named Reggie White Jr. told her, well, you got to have sex with me or you pay for it. So she couldn't pay for it, so he forced her to have sex with him, but they were still talking after that, right? But the most important thing is that it was other executives that was involved in Puffy's life. And for Puffy to be the only guy that gets on the stand is a sad day for hip-hop. Because once Capricorn had got beaten up allegedly, everybody said, well, she got her ass whooped. And when she was approached by an executive from Interscope, and you got to remember, Capricorn wasn't an artist on Interscope. Puffy wasn't doing business with the guy in Interscope. If you guys want his name, I'll tell you. And when they talked to him, Interscope gave Capricorn $1 million, a check, for don't say nothing about the incident with her and Puffy. She got mad because she had to pay taxes on it. And she thought it was a settlement where she didn't have to pay taxes on it. So when Jimmy Iovine gave her that check, that's when all hell broke off. But at the same time, I don't think this is a case where Puffy should be going to prison. And
do you believe Capricorn is Capricorn believable with this story with Diddy?
This is what I do know. I was in New York. And when I was in New York, it was me and a limo driver. That's it. I'm in different spots eating just by myself. I walks out, I see Capricorn, and I see another bitch. So those two hung out with me in New York, from restaurants to running around to doing whatever. So I don't know if the part that she was so scared of Puffy that they wouldn't talk to me, because I'm hanging out with them in New York. just us three. And I'm not here to badger nobody, but at the same time, when Reggie Wright Jr. basically made Capricorn, she said it over and over and over. I don't want to have sex with this. I don't know if I can cuss on here. I just have sex with the fat man.
Too late.
But, okay, but they did. And she continued to be around, right? But when it's all said and done, how could every person who's involved with Puffy is not on the stand? Except for Puffy. I get
it.
Some point,
I get it.
The law got to be blind.
I get it. Suge,
and
thank you very much for giving us.
Hey, for sure.
Go
one
ahead.
Last thing before I go, you got to remember, Death Row and the employees in Bad Boy was really good friends. A lot of them. Reggie Wright Jr. And the other guy that be with Puffy, I forgot his name, the other fat dude, right? But they called Reggie Wright Jr. to do security for Puffy and Biggie the night Biggie got shot. So I can't see that they will look at Capricorn affiliation with Death Row that bad and that type of threats. I'll be surprised. Gene, that's his name. Gene and Reggie Wright Jr. is great friends. So that's got to be understanding that something's there. And we just can't jump to conclusions and say, throw Puffy under the bus. Like I said, him and I are not friends, but Puffy definitely should walk. What's right is right, wrong is wrong. You guys enjoy your day. Nice talking to you.
Suge, I appreciate it. We'll speak again. Thank you for your perspective.
Hey, remember one thing. Don't live reverse. You got to live and drive. Go forward, not backwards. Enjoy yourself. I'm out.
Amen. Amen. So, Arthur Idala, I know you were enjoying that conversation. So, look, here's the bottom line. Nobody's clean in this situation. So Capricorn is going to have some things to answer for as well that obviously if Suge knows, the defense counsel will know as well, Arthur. So how does it help the defense to make this complicated and messy?
Well, first of all, Mom, I'm sorry you had to hear some curse words on Uncle Chris's show here. The bottom line is they're going to put in the prosecution, and the feds do this all the time. They're going to throw in as much dirty laundry as they possibly can, as the judge will allow them to. This is a rookie judge. He's going to give them a lot of latitude. But everyone who's in that courtroom following this agrees with you, Chris, how you started this off. The racketeering thing is thin. They're going to use her as an agent of him. They're talking about security guards who work for him. They're talking about just other guys who worked for him, employees of him. And you know how I feel about organized crime, but that's what they're trying to make it seem like, is he's the godfather, and there's captains and underbosses and all of that. And that's what they have to take the next couple of weeks to establish.
Yeah, it's just that, you know, to use the mob metaphor, it was always a way of getting guys who were putting bodies in the ground all over the place. This is more about a party lifestyle that we've seen thus far. You can judge it any way you want, but is it meeting the standard of the law? We'll see. Misty Maris, thank you for keeping a straight face. Arthur Idala, appreciate your perspective, especially when you're on that big case with Harvey Weinstein. Thank you for taking time for us tonight.
Congratulations to your daughter, Chris.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Coming up, NewsNation exclusive. Did the Biden White House ignore a federal court ruling and allow only non-white farmers, Black, Native American, Asian, Hispanic, to forego paying back government loans to the tune of $800 million? White farmers still had to pay. Brian Enton tracked down a whistleblower from the Department of Agriculture who will tell you the real deal. Next. DEI was a big initiative for the Biden administration, for better or worse. As part of that effort, the White House gave billions to minority-owned businesses by increasing federal contracts with disadvantaged groups. But here's what we didn't know until now. A government whistleblower, the Biden administration secretly instructed the Department of Agriculture to forgive the loans of all non-white farmers to the tune of $800 million, while white farmers still had to pay their loans back. This was done despite a federal judge ruling that race-based loan forgiveness is unconstitutional. NewsNation senior correspondent Brian Enton sat down with that whistleblower. Brian Enton brings you the story.
They were trying to keep this hushed because of the obvious implications of race-based loan forgiveness.
So just to be clear, if you were American Indian, Alaskan Native, Asian Black, African American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, Hispanic, or Latino, and you were in that group, you were told you didn't have to pay your bills, essentially?
Yes, that's correct, and that your loan would be forgiven up to 120% of the loan value. It was discriminatory, it was unethical, and the people who pushed it are still in charge of the agency.
So what happens now, Brian? And thank you for bringing us this great reporting.
Yeah, we've been trying to find out. The USDA did not respond to our specific questions, though they acknowledged what happened under the Biden presidency. It's interesting, though, you mentioned it under the American Rescue Plan Act, Biden wanted to forgive loans at 120% only for non-white farmers. Didn't matter how much money you had, you just couldn't be white. So you got the 100% loan forgiveness plus 20% extra. Federal judge said absolutely not, unconstitutional. And that's when the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, where all farmers were supposed to get help coming out of COVID. But this whistleblower, Chris, says they only alerted the non-white farmers. They only sent emails out and alerted the non-white farmers about this money that they could qualify for. So if you were white, you didn't get the money.
And of course, it also plays on the idea that he was told by a court not to do it this way, and he did anyway. That's obviously an issue now with the Trump administration, whether or not they're listening to the courts. This is a reminder, it's not just Trump. Brian Enton, thank you very much for the reporting. Appreciate you. All right, we'll be right back. The goal at NewsNation is to settle down the hype and focus on what really matters to you and your family. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.